Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program this evening. It promises to be another exciting time with Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. We call him Prof. Prof, you are welcome to the program this evening again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's nice to be back on your platform.
Prof, I'm not sure if you have been tracking, but we have. Today is session 40, big 40,
Really.
session 40.
I didn't know that you will have the patience to go this far. Well, it shows, on the other hand, it shows that global politics is not really boring. It throws up something new every week, really.
Absolutely, absolutely, and
As
we are
our
getting
audience, as our audience level.
viewers from countries that I cannot even pronounce. Not because obviously that one cannot pronounce them, but it's just that I look at some of those stats and I'm wondering where is that? Who is watching this there? But quite a lot of our viewers from Europe, from South Korea, some viewership there, all over, Prof, and the numbers keep growing on a weekly basis. So,
Thank you very much.
Prof, we're going to start this week from some of the questions that have come in. Let's start in Tanzania, Prof. Um, we've heard of the death of President Magufuli this week, and that has thrown up quite a lot of questions about Tanzania. And before we go into those questions, how do you react to the death of President Magufuli of Tanzania?
You know, it was William Shakespeare who, human being, even in office, is a complex human being.
Mm.
Quite a lot has been said recently about his attitude towards COVID-19, uh, his denial of the existence of the virus, his tardiness in allowing the Tanzanians to buy into the culture of face masks, physical distancing, and of course, vaccine. And that has tended to define the man in recent times. But we mustn't forget one thing, especially in Africa, where the culture of egoism, corruption, power drunkenness, where that is the culture. He was honest to a fault. Number two, he that he was president of the republic. He did not exhibit the the African culture of fake royalty. He was humble, and he tried to get those in office working under him. He didn't, in fact, he didn't practice do as I say, not as I do. He practiced do as I do. Here was a president who will be found cleaning streets on the days that's supposed to be devoted to environmental cleanliness. So he was mixed. The culture was mixed in him. I'm aware, I'm aware that he again, as time went on, he tended to crack down the opposition. And yet, one of the tributes that touched me, which I read, was from the leader of the opposition. So, not only did the Tanzanians value him, I think we, coming from the third world, must also value him. And we must hope that his kind will grow in Africa. Thank God, in a way, Tanzania had a culture of time limitation. So really, the political culture in Tanzania did not allow for the growth of teen gods. Right from the time of Nyerere, they allowed for the growth of teen gods who thought, well, they created their nation, they were gods of their nation, and they had to be there forever and ever. This was not the culture of this gentleman. We must applaud him for that. So while in a way being critical of his idiosyncratic attitude towards COVID-19, I offer him my maximum respect, and I think we will miss him. Those of us who believe that his kind should increase among the African elite, we will miss him.
Mm. Prof, one thing that strikes when you look at that story of President Magufuli, like you said, the fact that he represented that icon, but also what we're seeing now is the fact that a vice president, a female vice president, is constitutionally is going to be taking over from him. And up to this stage, still early days, but up till now, we haven't had um, any major issues of objections of any kind to that transition taking place. Do you see this becoming an issue at all, or do you think that the people of Tanzania and the lawmakers will let the constitution have its way?
Well, I have been quite, or I'm of the view that there is a solidity in the maturity of Tanzanians politically, that they're just, well, likely to take it as that's what the Constitution calls for. That's what will happen. Fortunately, in that area, we've also had a similar thing happen, I believe, in Malawi, where which had a female president, and the heavens did not collapse. Um, and that the vice president must show that the Tanzanians are not carrying some cultural embolism on their shoulders about gender equality or the role of women in governance. In some of the, I mean, we don't need to mention names. There are countries where, to even have a female judge becomes a major issue. Her religion becomes a major issue, even though she's the one who is entitled to be there. Not to now talk about having a female, vice president or a female governor. And countries where to surprise you, some of these countries are places where, as far back as early 1900s, you have had female barristers who qualified from the Inns of Court in London. The very first female judge I became aware of was before I went to the secondary school. So before 1955, I think around 1953 must be when you had it. And yet for this to still be an issue, even though I must quickly correct whatever impression I might have been trying to give, that this same country that I have in mind has had a female Chief Justice and has had female judges in the Supreme Court. However, one still knows that politically, because that's really what we're talking about, politically there are still issues with women becoming governors or deputy governors. So, but I think that for the Tanzanians, it's just going to be a usual occurrence. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to bring no.
Hmm. Did you hear me there, Prof?
No.
No. Okay. You cut us slightly towards the end of the comment. The next question, Prof, that I want to put to you here is, um, do you see the new vice president um, towing the same line as her predecessor once she becomes the president, or do you think that she may want to take the nation in a slightly different direction? What would your expectations be there?
Uh, I started this program by quoting Shakespeare. So let me quote him again, that there is no art to tell from the face what is in a man or a woman's mind. So really, who knows? Who knows how a human being will behave when invested with power? I would have thought, uh, and I must be careful here. I have 3 daughters, so I always warning me to watch, my analysis. I would have thought that being a woman and a Muslim, you will get a gender positive power orientation, that there will be a continuation of the good parts of the departed president. In other words, her attitude towards corruption will be uncompromising, but exhibited in a softer way. Attitude towards, power eccentricity will be the same, but perhaps in a less, it's so easy for a man to be very abrasive.
Mm.
And when a woman is abrasive, we are surprised. Um, I'm thinking now of Golda Meir
Mm.
compared to Margaret Thatcher. Golda Meir was Prime Minister of Israel, a very tough Prime Minister, a very tough lady, but with a grandmother disposition. Now, from what I've read about her, likely to invite some of her ministers to a meeting at home, and they find her with an apron on, cooking in the kitchen, but laying down hard lines about policy, and yet being prepared to cook the food they're all going to eat and serve them. Whereas, Margaret Thatcher, well, Iron Lady. So that says it all. So I hope that what we will get is a hope, and we will monitor it, but that what we will get from the incoming female president of Tanzania will be on policies straightforward, unflinching, but done in a way that is not abrasive.
Mm. Thank you for that analysis, Prof. Let's move to Bolivia. And interesting developments over the last week in terms of the arrest of an ex interim president on some charges that they've used some shocking words like terrorism. She's been charged with her allies on carrying out a coup on the then President, Mr. Morales. What is your take on what's going on there, Prof?
Quite interesting. Usually, our attitude tends to, especially in societies that are volatile, is let's let sleeping dogs lie. Let's just turn the page and move on. And it has been my view that that has tended to encourage wrongdoers on the grounds that, well, they'll get away with it. And at the end of the day, the society will move on. And what's happened in Bolivia, I mean, at the time it happened, I was shocked myself. I mean, this was blatant corruption of the institutions of government to get rid of a sitting president who they had to run into exile to avoid, um, worse things happening to him. And those right-wing forces in Bolivia thought they had gotten away with it, just as it happened in Brazil, where Lula was railroaded into prison to avoid him running in an election against the present president when the public opinion polls showed that Lula was going to win. They railroaded him. From what we know now, there were indications not only from the military to the judiciary that they really will not be comfortable with Lula returning to power. And so the judiciary then played ball and convicted him on very spurious charges of corruption. So what's happening in Bolivia? In fact, in the whole of South America, they should keep an eye on it, because it means that you can still be brought back, even after what you thought you've gotten away with it, to face the consequences of your action, which possibly was in breach of the Constitution. So, as you can tell, I'm in favor of it.
Yeah. Do you think others, not just in South America, but maybe other nations, would be looking at that situation, as it's starting to become a bit more common in other countries where ex-presidents or interim presidents, as the case may be, are starting to face the law? I think we're seeing something similar with President Trump in the United States. Is that going to change the narrative for our leaders?
I think so. Um, one of the narratives, since you use that word, which I was not even aware of, presumably because not all the the active participants are singing from the same tune, was in Ghana. One of those who came in with quote unquote the Rawlings first coup, where um, military presidents or military heads of state were executed. They were executed according to one of the participants who is still alive for overthrowing Nkrumah and thereby committing treason. Simple. Where Rawlings kind of shied away and rather talked more about corruption, even though he couldn't hang the charge of corruption on General Afrifa, who was one of those executed. And Afrifa was involved in the coup against Nkrumah. So we have had that played out in Ghana at that time. So it is very possible that we may be watching in Bolivia something that may then become the norm for people who overthrow constitutional government, and will be prepared to pay the price for it. Having said that, however, I am not sure we should push this too far,
Mm.
because there is, and there has always been, from the time of the French Revolution, that, but which later became concretized in the American Declaration of Independence,
Independent.
that where a government becomes so oppressive and corrupt, this, that the people have a right to rise up and deal with that government. So you're going to be having this push back, push right, push center over what I will call, the doctrine of the sanctity of elected regimes versus the lack of sanctity of oppressive regimes.
Prof, there is a question I want to ask you here. Because in almost all the nations that of the world that are going through this kind of uh, political systems that we see, there is always one group coming against another, and the pushback and all of that. Can we ever have politics where it's not one party always taking the other party to court, always claiming the other party did something, whether right or wrong? But could we ever have politics where people just went forward, they're dedicated to serving the nation, they finish their service, they step down gracefully, walk away, let someone else take over?
It's not part of human character. I think from the time human beings were created, um, if we just take, just for example, I'm not saying that is the only version that exists, but if we take the biblical version uh, from Genesis onwards, human beings, even when there were only two, Abel and Cain, one killed the other. There were disagreements amongst them. Why do you think you have civil wars? Even within the same Jewish community, once they left Egypt, there was even rebellion while they were still in Sinai. So really, no, no. I know of an African nationality who have a proverb that we can't all sleep and face the same direction. So differences are embedded, I believe, in our soul, in our mentality.
All right, Prof, let's move to North Korea. As we start to see some statements coming out of quite important people, I would say, in North Korea. Last week, we talked about the U.S. foreign policy. We were seeing them a little bit more active in going to other countries and stepping out there. But then I want to read this to you, Prof. And this was a comment attributed to the sister of Kim Jong Un. And the statement is this: it says, if it, referring to the US, wants to sleep in peace for the coming 4 years, it had better refrain from causing a stink at its first step. What would you say to that coming from the sister of the leader of that country?
um, Rather crude language, not diplomatic, um, especially for somebody whom we've seen the other side of her during the summit meetings between her brother and Trump. You know, there have been times on this program when I have said, may God save us from Iran and from Israel. I should have added from North Korea, because there is no strategy that the Americans have adopted that have worked. Obama tried what I will call the doctrine of patience in diplomatic non-engagement with Korea. It didn't work. Trump tried the doctrine of immediate engagement in diplomatic relations. It led to nowhere. Bush was somewhere in between. It didn't work. Nothing seems to have stopped, or no policy engagement or non-engagement seem to be working in deterring North Korea from one, securing its independence, two, securing that independence through not diplomatic engagement, but through military engagement, short of outright war. And I think the reason why North Korea has been able to defy every American policy option is because China itself is committed to an independent North Korea, because it does not want it shares a long border with North Korea, and should there be problem, it does not want refugees overwhelming those provinces that are next to North Korea. And also, should North Korea collapse, China does not want an extension of American power through the unification of both Koreas to its border under an American umbrella. So really, it's like they're playing a table tennis match. Bounce the ball to you, you bounce this back, and it's like we've been here before. Well, before this was the way we played it. Maybe I'll play it the other way, and the other way, the other guy is waiting for you, because there is no engagement pattern that has not been repeated over and over again. Prophecy in international relations is a dangerous engagement. It makes fools of even the best scholars. Well, let me stick my neck out that there is nothing that is going to prevent North Korea from becoming a nuclear power. Surprisingly, that may now moderate its excesses, because short of that first time when the Americans used nuclear weapons against Japan, there's been no other exchange of the use of nuclear weapons in any confrontation. On the contrary, the beginning of wisdom in diplomacy tends to the possession of nuclear weapons. So this is one of the conundrums that you have in international relations, that nuclear weapon countries tend to be to moderate their excesses. Now, without going into it, there is one exception to that rule, who are the ultimate, as what I think is called the Samson option, bringing the whole world down on their heads, if their existence is ever threatened. But I believe that, in fact, every nuclear power probably has a Samson.
Prof, one
So
question.
sorry?
Sorry, go on, sir.
that should they be attacked, and should that attack be one of an existential proportion, they will use their nuclear weapons to create havoc for everybody.
Hmm. Prof, we're seeing in from the United States as they have been moving around. In this current trip, Secretary of State Blinken arrived in Seoul, and as well, you then had General Lloyd Austin. They seem to be moving together at the same time to some of these countries. Is that not an aggressive posture on the side of the United States to have your top military a person attending this kind of meetings?
Look at the American coat of arms, the presidential seal. On one hand were arrows. On the other hand, an olive branch. And it's a question of which way do you want me to turn the head of my hawk? Towards the arrows, in which case it will be a highly militaristic engagement, or towards the olive branch, in which case you say, I come in peace. Diplomacy will determine our engagement. And I think this is a classic illustration of what the United States does with its diplomacy. So I don't think it's meant to antagonize anybody. I think if the Secretary for Defense has been the only one on that trip, yes, we probably could have said this is what this stands for: use of military resources to solve whatever problem there is. But in this case, that the two of them are moving in sync, it is a signal to China, because really China is the objective of the trip. It's a signal to China that if you want us to be engaged diplomatically, we are ready. But if you want us to be engaged militarily, we are still the most powerful country in the world.
Prof, there's a question here that someone has put here. You've touched on it somewhat, but I'd like to get your take by putting the question direct to you. There is talk about North Korea carrying out missile tests. If they get more aggressive with their missile tests, um, what response would you expect from the United States?
So this is why I said there's no option that the United States has not tried, short of going to war with North Korea, which in a way we had under the United Nations banner shortly after the Second World War. There was the Korean War. And I think there are memories, both in the United States and in North Korea, of that war. And those memories are not pleasant. Memories of war are usually not pleasant in any case, but the viciousness of that particular war makes it stand out. Now, short of that missile, the proposed test by North Korea, short of that missile hitting an American ship or 2, an American military base in that area, or 3, the territory of an American ally. As long as that missile does not do any of these 3 things, the United States will criticize it, maybe even go to the United Nations to get a resolution condemning it. And it will have to be a mild resolution to get the support of China. There's nothing the Americans will do. However, if the missile does one of the 3 things that I identified earlier on, then expect the United States to hit back. Those are targets which will constitute a red line for the United States.
Hmm. Prof, while we're on this United States point here, there was a statement that President Joe Biden made regarding Vladimir Putin of Russia, where he referred to him as a killer. What are your views on those strong words used there?
I think that's a regrettable expression by an American president, or by any president for that matter. The Russians have an intelligence capability that knows a thing or two about what the United States itself is up to in several parts of the world. In any case, you don't need the American intelligence, the Russian intelligence asset. The report by Senator Church is there of the United States through the CIA having been involved in assassinations of presidents, activists in other parts of the world. So Putin can hit back by calling him an assassin or whatever have you. And don't forget that since the time of, well, I can't remember now when it started, whether it is under Bush the father or Reagan, I can't remember, when America started using drones to kill its political opponents in other parts of the world, especially in Asia, Southeast Asia, Middle East. Now, what do you call that? The United Nations actually has been quite critical of the use of the drone to kill political opponents, especially when in trying to kill one person, you end up attacking a marriage reception where you kill your target, but you kill several other people also. What do you call that? So I think it was ill-advised to have used that term. Yes, Putin doesn't like Biden. We all know that. But President Biden shouldn't. You see, the thing is, when you descend into the gutter to fight a pig, both of you get dirty. The pig loves it because that is its natural habitat, and it can get up and walk away laughing. You who got into the gutter with the pig, you are the one who will have dirt on your face and will be quickly looking for a place to have a bath. So really, I think Well, I don't know why President Biden used that term. I don't think he needed to go that far to show that he and Putin are not on kissing terms.
Mm. Prof, there's been some response from Putin, and let me put this to you to get your reaction. Putin has responded. He said, "I would like to offer President Biden the opportunity to continue our discussion, but on condition that we'll do so in what is called live, online, without anything pre-recorded, in an open and direct conversation."
Smart. Smart of Putin. I think it's letting Biden know that he is younger. He's been at this game for a much longer time, and that he'll beat Biden in any debate, open or otherwise, but that the world can then tell who is really in charge, in control. That's my deconstructing of what of what Putin means.
Do you think the White House would respond to such an offer?
I think both of them should get off this infantile diplomatic exchange and let's start talking. Let them, for the sake of all of us, start talking seriously about serious issues like the strategic arms limitation talks, about the need to bring to a close the tragedy that is in Syria, the way both of them had contributed. I mean, each time I see documentaries or pictures or news items on Syria, its effect on children, on health, on education, on this, I always feel that the media pulls back on identifying the contributions of both Putin and Obama, and not even necessarily Trump, to the tragedy that is Syria. I think, they should call out both the United States and Russia, and of course now throw in Iran, Turkey, as to the people who are causing the humanitarian disasters in Syria. Now, those are the things the two of them should sit down and start talking about, and not this, I don't know, my.
All right, Prof. Let's move on to Myanmar. Uh, Again, the protests there have been going on for quite a while. You spoke about this some weeks back, but the intensity is not abating of the protests, and now we're starting to see more groups within Myanmar now starting to dissociate themselves from the military. What is your take on the
Go ahead.
What is your take on the evolving situation in Myanmar now?
It's just getting more tragic. It's like I predicted. Um, you don't, if you're going to have a face-off with a military regime, then be prepared for a long haul, or have on your side a might that is, or a power that is mightier than the military regime that you are going to confront. Um, a military regime It's a special, it's a special institution um, where loss of faith will be more tragic for that institution than even for the opponent. Therefore, they will be prepared to do anything not to lose faith. And I said this at the very, very beginning, when, in fact, at that time, violence was not there. We were talking about the nature of the election that was held. And I was arguing for a negotiated democratic syndrome in Myanmar, like they had the very first time, where she shared, where Aung San Suu shared power with the military. They worked it out. It was a negotiation. The very next election then to have been conducted in such a way that the military lost face was, if you like, an act of lack of wisdom on the part of Aung San Suu Kyi and the her Democratic Party. I wouldn't have done that. So the military pushed back, and we are now in the phase where there is now a face-off between the military and the democratic activists. And as history would show, it happened in Nigeria. I was involved in that. The military has the weapons, the democratic activists don't have the weapons. So each uses what it has. The activists use their numbers, their value, if you like, the higher moral value of human rights. But these are not equal to the weapons in the hands of the military. So in the engagement, at the beginning, the loss is going to be on the part of the activists. And it had got to the stage where I could easily have predicted it, where they are now saying, where is the United Nations? The United Nations doesn't go to war with military regimes just because the world feels scandalized. If the United Nations were to do that, the United Nations will be at war in several countries, including Syria that we just talked about, Iran, where else? You know, China itself. Is the United Nations going to go to war with China? So really, at times, democratic activists show some lack of understanding of international relations and the limitations of the United Nations. The Pope has become involved, and this is good. It increases the tension on the military regime. But I would like to remind the democratic activists of the saying by Stalin, how many divisions does the Pope have?
Hmm. Um, there is a question here on YouTube. Um, it says, is it then okay to substitute military regime with a dictator or a fascist? Hmm. Prof, we
Come
only have
again?
There's a question on YouTube here. Is it then okay to substitute military regime with a dictator or a fascist?
I don't understand the question.
Yeah. Let's drop that. I don't even think you'll be able to do justice to it in the time we've got left. To that person, sorry, maybe you want to clarify that a little bit more. But Prof, I want to end on one question in the sort of 2 minutes that we have left, and that is on the situation with COVID-19 vaccine and the results coming out now and reports that we are starting to get a lot of negative results, people dying, blood clots, countries now banning the AstraZeneca vaccine, now resuming it. What are your thoughts on what's going on there, Prof?
I think it is unfortunate what Europe has done. I have been quite critical of EU's stand or EU's the procedure that the EU has adopted over vaccine from the very, very beginning. It's been laid back, it's been lackadaisical, it hasn't shown a sense of the emergency of the situation. I said this the very first time when Europe was dragging its feet after the United States and Great Britain had already approved the vaccines. It took weeks for Europe dragging its feet. And even after it approved some vaccines, it still said, well, it will, next week we can start injecting. And some of the European countries simply said, we don't have time for this. People are suffering. We are starting the use of the vaccine right now. This is the same thing that Europe has just done on the Oxford vaccine. This is more politics than science. And the fact that they've now have to reverse themselves. What new information do they have now that they didn't have last week? The WHO want them not to do so. Their own agency warned them that there's no reason to suspend this. And what they should have realized is now that they have reversed themselves and said you can use this, how many of their people do you think will go back and not be asking for that Oxford vaccine or any vaccine for that matter? I think this is an act of recklessness on the part of the EU. I don't know whether this tit for tat on Brexit. I mean, we should don't read conspiracy into everything like Trump will do. But I don't understand. I just don't understand why they have done this.
Prof, thank you for this evening. We have run out of time. But to our viewers across all the platforms, first of all, thank you for being there this evening. Next week is a town hall session. And by that, we mean that there will be a virtual studio audience. And that is you being able to join the session live, contribute to the discussion, and pose your questions directly to Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. And for next week, as Prof highlighted last week, we're going to be dealing with the topic, the relevance of the Commonwealth in modern civilization. And we're just looking at the net benefit of the Commonwealth to all the member states, who is benefiting from it. We will be exploring that next week with Prof and with all the different people who will be joining the session. So please, if you want to be part of that, info at tmeinsights.com, info at tmeinsights.com. Send us an email and we will send you some of the joining instructions. Prof, any last words? Once again, exciting times this evening.
Well, again, to thank our viewers for their patience. I'm sorry we're always running out of time, but it's because the issues raised do demand an extensive analysis rather than just for me to slide over my comments. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Prof. I think people are loving that. Someone is saying that this is my masterclass on international affairs. Another person is saying here, thank you so much. Another wonderful session, enlightening once again. Prof, I don't want to use the word your fans, but it's your fans are enjoying the program. Thank you very much, Prof. And to our viewers, see you again next. Sorry. One last announcement before I forget. The times are changing the weekend of the 28th of March. And what that means is that for the town hall next week, it would be the normal time, 7 p.m. UK, 8 p.m. Nigeria. But the following week, the program will now change to 7 p.m. Nigeria, matching the UK time. But for next week, same time, 7 p.m. UK, 8 p.m. Nigeria. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so you get the notification when the program goes live. Thank you. See you next week.